It's all backwards. Here's a little bit better today. Oh, thanks. Hey there, hopheads! Welcome back to the shed. I'm Even Star, and this is the beer and review where the two of us drink beer in my shed and talk about it. And today, I've got a very special beer today. There's a little bit of a story to go with it, so bear with me. It is September time here in the United Kingdom, and it is time to harvest your hops. And I grow hops in my backyard. I do not make beer with my hops because I don't have the space for brewing beer, although I do make my own wine. But I do like to grow hops. They're very low maintenance. I'm looking out the window at them now. I'm proud of my hops babies this year. They did me proud. Almost 4 kilograms of hops came off the vines this year, and now because I don't brew, I generally tend to save some to make wine with, to make tea with. Hops make very nice tea in the evening because they make you sleepy. I'm going to be making wine with some of them this year because why not, right? But the rest are just going to go to waste. So I spoke to Brentwood Brewing Company, who you will remember from not just last week, but several beer reviews, and asked them, can you use some fresh hops? And not all breweries will use fresh hops. They will only use like the dried hops pellets because that's all they have time or space to brew. But Brentwood, thankfully, are a little bit experimental, which we will talk about today. And they want to do some fresh hopped beers this year, so I drove down there to the brewery and dropped off the hops, and the gentleman there was kind enough to gift me with some beers to try, and more specifically this beer here. I'll just give you a close-up of the label. Now you might notice on that label, it doesn't say Brentwood Brewery on that label. It says Elephant School Brewery on that label. And Elephant School is the experimental sort of brand of the Brentwood Brewery. They're not a huge brewery, but they do have this sort of experimental brand where the brewers there will, try different recipes. They do collaborations. This particular beer is a collaboration with a London Belgian brewery. I've not had this one before. I'm quite excited to try it. It is called Cheru Kol. And a Cheru Kol, which probably most of you watching this won't know, is a stick that you use to drive an elephant. And the story behind the name Elephant School is that here in Essex, the East India Company used to train people to ride elephants. Yes, indeed. So that's the history behind the name of the brewery as well as the beer. As I said, this is a collaboration with a London brewery called the Solvay Society. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes, the Solvay Society, and they specialize in Belgian type beers. And this is a Belgian style beer. It's a Belgian Inverted single. Now, if you don't know what that refers to, it refers to, I believe, anyway, I didn't have time to ask Brentwood about this, so I'm sure they'll correct me when they see this video, is in certain Belgian beer styles, they will use a caramelized sugar, which is an inverted sugar, and what that does is it breaks down sucrose into sugars that are easier for yeasts to digest, and it's done by caramelizing the sugars. and that gives the beers different flavors because you get what's called that Maillard reaction of caramelization. So I'm very interested to try this and to understand how that affects beer flavors. It also has been brewed with fig and rosemary, so this is a flavored beer. You know, Belgian beer is quite famous for adding different things. They've been doing that for a very long time. Fruits, especially Belgian fruit beers, which I'm not myself particularly overly fond of, but this has fig and rosemary in it, and that's a flavor combination which just really excites me because I love both of those things. So, without further ado, let's get the show on the road. So again, I've got my fancy beer glass. This is a 330 ml bottle, which should fit quite nicely in my tulip glass. And as I expected, because it's been made with that sort of caramelized sugar, I did expect it to be a little bit dark. Maybe not this dark. This is quite a nice toasty brown color. Yes, indeed. There we go. So it's not dark brown. It's not like a porter or a stout. I'd say, holding that up to the light, it's a light to mid brown. It's almost like a russet color. It's almost got a little bit of red in it. Oh, that smells beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh, it just smells so fruity and robust and floral. I hope it tastes as good as it smells. Mmm. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna take a minute to process that. Up front, quite sweet. Not overpowering, like it's not cloying or sickly sweet, but it's sweet like figs are sweet, right? It's been made with figs and caramelized sugars. So, you know, I kind of should have expected it to be a little bit sweet. It is extremely fruity. It just smells delicious. And it does have the flavor of figs in it. You actually can taste the figs. Like if someone didn't tell me that was made with figs, I'd taste that and go, it's like, oh, there's like a fig flavor there, right? Yes. Like a fresh fig flavor, which is both sweet, astringent, fruity, floral. So that's what you get right up front, and you are left with in your mouth this extremely aromatic, floral taste. So for me, when I'm tasting beer, there's always up front. So what do you smell when you take a sip? What's the first thing that hits you? Then there'll be a middle. So after you've let that sort of, you know, develop, after that initial upfront sweetness, what's the next thing? And then there'll be a finish. So that finish is that really light and airy floral taste. It's almost like orange blossom water left in the mouth. Now, if you hadn't told me there's rosemary in there, I would never have guessed. So, you know, when somebody says a beer is made with rosemary, I guess, you know, the expectation is that it's going to be that really sort of dank, like, smack in the mouth like you get with some, like, American IPAs, right? Because so many of those hops that they use in those, they do have that really resinous, rosemary, piney taste. But this doesn't at all. There's barely in the middle a little bit of bitter sharpness, and it's more a bitter sharpness of like a burnt sugar, which I know sounds really bad, but actually is very pleasant. Even if a beer is not made with that, you can get, you know, some really malty beers with toasted malts that have that sort of really burnt caramelized sugar taste. So I would say that that's not an overly complex beer. you get the sweetness of the fruit in there. You get a tiny bit of that sort of bitterness from burnt sugar. I don't get a lot of rosemary in it, but maybe that's just adding to that a little bit of that sort of middle bitter flavor. Which again, when you say something tastes bitter, it sounds bad, but beer is, it's a bitter drink. I like bitter beers, and we put hops in them, and they're called bittering agents, right? So when you say something's bitter, that's not necessarily a negative a negative comment. I kind of expect that in a beer to be bitter somewhere in it, right? So that's where you've got sort of that 3 or 4 stages of tasting, is that somewhere there'll be a little bit of bitterness in there. In this one, it's particularly hard to detect. That just keeps getting better and better. For me, because I'm not fond of sweet beers particularly, that's more of a sipping beer for me. So that 330ml bottle is the perfect size for me. I'll sit here for like an hour and sip that. And the warmer it gets, because it's been in my fridge, the warmer it gets, the more the flavors will develop and oxygenate and taste better. I'm just going to check the alcohol. So 4.5% alcohol, not hugely strong. And I believe this is vegan as well. Yeah, vegan friendly. Brentwood beers are mostly vegan. I believe the Chocolate Orange from last week also vegan, however not gluten-free, because it is made with barley, and I think there's a little bit of wheat in there. So I'm really enjoying that, and I'm going to enjoy that for probably the next 45 minutes or so, while I look at pastoral European landscapes on Pinterest and a daydream about a visit to Belgian breweries. So there you go, Cheru Kol from Elephant School Brewing Company and the Solvay Society. Now, if you like a woman and her bottle opener talking about craft beer in a shed, please take a moment to subscribe. And if you like this video in particular, please give the Tiki and I thumbs up. And until next time, I'm Even Star, you're in the sheds, and this has been the Beer and Review.